A very good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to day 3 of the third edition of afaqs CMO Week. For this edition, our theme is product and marketing innovation. The idea is to analyze how product and marketing innovation has become a survival strategy for brand marketers. Over the last 2 days, we've hosted brand and marketing custodians from FMCG and consumer durable sector. Today, on the panel, we have speakers from e-pharma, healthcare, and a marketing and communication expert. To begin with, I would like to thank our associate sponsor, My Smart Price. On the panel, we have Ashish Bajaj, Head of Marketing, Partnerships and PR for MediBuddy, Dilip Manas, Co-founder and EVP Global Partnerships, DocAir, Praful Akali, Founder and MD, Medulla Communications, and Prateek Verma, VP Product for 1mg. Now introducing you to the moderator of the session, Shreyas Kulkarni, Senior Correspondent at afaqs. Once again, thank you everyone for joining. Over to you, Shreyas.
Thank you, Devashish, for the welcome. To my panelists and to the viewers, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to CMO Week. This is our third edition. And each of our editions, we design the session around a theme. And as Devashish mentioned, this time's theme is around innovation. For me personally, innovation is all about letting me do things in a more easier and convenient manner. A decade ago, the likes of Flipkart and Amazon changed the shopping landscape forever. The innovations I saw was the cash on delivery, a simple concept, but it changed the way we shop forever. 6 to 7 years ago, the way we ordered food online changed, courtesy the Zomatos and the Swiggies of the world. Now, in the last 2 or 3 years, the way we order medicines online has changed and is still changing. We call them e-pharmacies, but they're not just restricted to selling medicines online. There's a whole healthcare ecosystem that's there, from booking diagnostic tests to selling related healthcare equipment and so much more. For me, as someone who observes the marketing and brand landscape, it's very exciting. But let's face it, they are also very essential, considering the shadow of the pandemic upon us. And that is why we are here to discuss the great Indian online chemist. We Indians love to try something. And this last 1 year, many of us have tried to order medicines online, while there are so many of us who are apprehensive about this. We have so many fears, questions about this. We are going to talk about this and a lot more during this session. Now, I would like to ask my panelists to take 2 minutes and just give us a brief understanding, your thoughts about this category, the e-pharmacy category. What do you feel about it? What do you think are the challenges it faces? And keep the context around the last 1 year, ever since the national lockdown was rolled out last year. 2 minutes, keep it brief. I have so many more questions for you, so let's not release everything right away. Why don't we start with Mr. Bajaj?
Sure. Thanks, Shreyas, for having me onto the panel today and the fellow panelists. To start with, I think e-pharmacies have opened the floodgates for the entire digital healthcare ecosystem to flourish in a market like India, given the infrastructure that we have for healthcare. And to be very contextual to last 1 year, like how groceries went online, how food ordering and the restaurant business went online in the last lockdown, to be more precise, 1.5 years. Even the pharmacies, like you've collated the theme of the discussion as well very well, the great Indian online chemist. So, and it's true in its every sense.
All right. Thanks so much. Mr. Manas, how about you?
Yeah, I think I completely agree with Ashish on that bet that it has opened the floodgates. I think it was completely unexpected, and every category is looking for that inflection point. I think Amazon and Flipkart came into being at one point of time, and then, as you rightly said, Zomato as well as Swiggy came in. I think last 1 year was for digital healthcare because people before that were not really open to take these things head on. But when lockdown happened, they were pushed to the corner. Adoption of digital really fast-tracked, especially in healthcare, and that's what we have seen in last 1.5 years. The way category has grown, the way aggregation of the category is happening, the way investments have started flowing into the category. These are all positive signs, and I think where we are today, maybe around 3 to 5% of the total market, this can just go northwards, and I have my hopes high that it will meet the target of around 50 to 20% of the total pharmaceutical selling happening through e-pharmacy, maybe in next 2 years or 3 years at the max. Yeah. So those are my initial thoughts about it.
I think that's an exciting challenge, and 2 or 3 years down the line, if we ever meet, it will be fun to discuss how the category has evolved.
Yeah.
Mr. Verma, how about you? What do you feel about this category since the last 1 year?
Yeah, so as mentioned by other fellow panelists, I think COVID pandemic has been one of the greatest or biggest challenges we have had in our lifetimes. And online healthcare platforms have stood the test of time and proved to be the backbone of for this fight against COVID in recent times. And right from enabling doctor consultations to getting lab tests done at home, as mentioned, and making life-saving drugs available to every corner of India, online healthcare platforms have been pretty effective. And 1mg, with its vision of making healthcare understandable, accessible, and affordable for everyone, is playing its role in this. We are seeing somewhere around 45 million monthly active users, and that is a testament of what we are talking about, the acceptance that is taking place. And we are continuously, increasingly seeing acceptance of digital solutions in this sector.
You make a fair point about the acceptance rising every month. What about you, Mr. Akali? Your points, your viewpoints.
Yeah, so there is a lot of traction happening in the industry, like everyone's been talking about. You put on IPL sometime back, and there were a lot of these advertisements happening from online pharmacies. You kind of go through a VC circle, and there's a lot of funding happening for these e-pharmacies. You open up an Economic Times, and there's something happening, in terms of acquisitions. You even come onto afaqs, and there's a theme topic on online pharmacies. But two thoughts, right? So one is that from a consumer perspective, like Pratik was talking about, it's still a monthly active user base of about 45 million, you said, Pratik, and just from a penetration perspective, there is a long way to go yet. And we are literally not even at the tip of the iceberg in terms of where the industry can travel and does need to travel to come truly into the mainstream. And I hope that we discuss ways in which the industry can come even more into the mainstream in the next few years.
True, that's a very good point you've made, because to come mainstream, I believe one needs to win the trust of everyone. And when it comes to e-pharmacies, we've noticed the biggest psychological hurdle is around the fake medicines. Whenever someone, let's say first timer, wishes to buy medicines online, he or she will obviously think, is the medicine genuine? Will they send me some medicine which is very close to the expiry date? Now, this is one, I think, the biggest psychological hurdle for people to get onto the e-pharmacy world, along with many other ones. It could be delivery time, stock availability, so many things. So let's start with Mr. Verma again. You head product, you are at the core of 1mg. What are you doing to dispel this psychological hurdle?
So as mentioned, I think one of the biggest barriers to this sector is that of trust. People, and especially relevant because we are talking about medicines, something that people consume to get well. So it's slightly difficult to trust someone else, a physical or a virtual entity, which is not there in front of you, right? Your chemist, your the local shopkeeper, those are the people you see every day or once every week or something like that, and there's a relationship that you develop with them. Now it's very hard to trust someone who's just in 1mg.com or something like that, just a mobile app, right? but if you think about it, that's how people have evolved. So 10 years back, same exact thing happened when the Flipkarts and the Amazons of the world were coming into India. So online payment was something which was similar. People were not ready to trust an online virtual platform with their money, and there was a time when people were not ready to pay online and buy stuff online, but we overcame that, and obviously it took all these companies some steps and some measures to get people overcome all this fear. uh, on the similar line, so this is exactly what we have been doing. For example, if you will try to buy through us, instead of having everything very coming through a digital interface, what we have done is we have put registered pharmacists and who will become a part of your online ordering experience. So there would be someone who will interact with you, who will guide you, who will help you, and we'll try to replicate the same model which exists in an offline world. And by doing so, with every step, by making all the information transparent, readily available for users, we are trying to instill that trust in the minds of users. So long way to go, I think, still, but taking all these baby steps is what we can do and we should do. As I think mentioned earlier, the online pharmacy sector is still less than 1% of the total pharmacy sector. So there's a long way to go, and I think with steps like these and to some extent pandemic forcing people to try some of these portals. So I think through these measures, people will come on online eventually.
And I'll add one more question to you, and Mr. Bajaj, you can also take up on this. When it comes to purchasing medicines, prescription medicines, e-pharmacies want us to upload prescriptions. When it comes to the general shopping experience, we're used to surfing, seeing things online, checking out things online, and then buying them. But uploading something doesn't come naturally to many of us. How are you making that experience smoother? Because that's one of the most important ones when it comes to prescriptions. There's also risk to it. Someone might upload an old prescription. There are some nefarious elements who might upload a fake one just to get through. Now, isn't that a risk you are facing?
Yeah, so on the first point of making this experience of uploading prescription, so even before that, if you take a step back, people also need to be educated about this concept of prescription, why it is important, why it is necessary. As you mentioned, one of the pointers is that it should be valid for a certain duration. Now that is something I don't know. I don't want to comment on the offline scenario, but when it comes to online channels, we follow all the stringent processes according to whatever guidelines exist, whatever rules exist. And there's a checklist of a lot of parameters, and this ordering experience has to go through that checklist. And all of this is enabled by technology, meaning that it will not take you half an hour or minutes even. All of this will be done automatically on the fly, where you'll be able to digitize all this information and check for all the nefarious elements, as you mentioned, so that we are not able to we don't end up processing something.
Yes, absolutely.
And there are a lot of solutions which exist which can help you catch some of these issues upfront.
These are some wonderful points, and I will come back to you with this. There are so many questions I have on this. Mr. Bajaj, what about you?
So I'll try to answer this coming from when we have, like how we were discussing that there were introduction of new categories or industry creation on the internet side of world. We saw e-commerce, which made us payments digitally, which we were not well versed with, and we saw how. Then going through ordering on platforms, we were able to see it in the menu and smell it in some senses, but we were now seeing pictures in ordering. So those were the consumer journeys, or those were the makeshifts that happened for a consumer. Now for digital healthcare, e-pharmacies, or anything to do with healthcare onto the digital side of the world, it was important to bring on these kind of checks and balances as well. Though there might be things which people are really doing for the first time, but it is required as the formation of the basics for that entire category and industry. Of course, like Prateek was mentioning, all the checks and balances, we also being a marketplace in terms of our medicine deliveries,
yes,
we also keep those checks and balances in place on our platform as well.
I understand. Thank you for that. Now, Mr. Manaz, I'm coming to you. While you heard e-pharmacy experts on this, I want your take regarding the doctors. There's a drug for medicine, say for diabetes, which I might not be able to access in tier 3 cities. And the doctors would not prescribe it 5 years ago because he or she understood lack of availability. That has changed now. Because a doctor understands, hey, I can prescribe this medicine because my patient can access it through an e-pharmacy. He or she will receive it in 6 to 10 days. Do you think that is influencing the doctors to urge or encourage patients to go online? And in a way, it's also dispelling the myth that don't worry, you will get genuine medicines on the platform. There's no worry about that. Are you seeing that such a trend happening?
I would say it's happening both the ways. I wouldn't really say it's happening every time, but yeah, few cases where a physician is convinced that a certain medicine is required or a certain molecule or a drug will give more benefits to my patient, definitely they are prescribing that. I think a lot of time we have this very skewed misconception about physicians that they write because they benefit out of it. I have been in healthcare for almost 2 decades, more than 2 decades. I don't think that happens. That happens in 5% of the cases, and these 5% of cases are everywhere. You will find 5% of patients who must be sending fake prescriptions to 1mg and to Medibuddy. You must be finding 5% of the guys who are in all kind of wrong practices, and that happens everywhere else. But I think, as far as I know, most of the physicians want to do good for the patient. Yes. They will prescribe if it makes sense to them, if they feel it will give them benefits that are required. And yes, patients are getting online because of that, because they are trying to fetch these medicines from wherever possible. If they have confidence on physician, and if a physician is completely committed towards that particular drug, patients would try to get it. I have seen that in my mom's case. She is a diabetic, so she was written some of these medicines when she was in Jammu. She has gone online, she ordered some of the medicines, and then she got it delivered because she felt, and it's psychological also, right? Because a physician has written, and if I'm not taking that, the efficacy itself comes down by around 30-40%. So these kind of things are happening. And as I think all of us are talking over here, you can't stop an idea whose time has come, right? That's a very famous word. I think e-pharmacy is their digital advertising, so to say, or digital marketing, so to say. These, especially in the healthcare domain, the right time for them to make a mark has come. And I think it is just going to go northwards. I'm a firm believer in that. And that's why we have also invested so heavily in a platform like ours. But here the topic is around Chemist, but I think digital is just going to now go higher. People have understood, especially during this first and second wave, that if they are not investing themselves or not committing themselves to a platform like this, or rather a category like this, they are heading for disaster.
It's very interesting you made this point, because it's very true. These days, be it my parents or me or someone younger to me, the first approach to thinking starts with digital. Like it's the adage, we don't search online, we just Google stuff. Everything has to go through digital first. And while we continue the conversation, there are many questions popping up. Now, all of you, I request all of you to take them up. If it's directed to someone, please go ahead. If it's general, you can choose to answer them in the Q&A tab below. Mr. Akali, I'll come to you. You've heard all of them. You heard about the problems, about what they're doing. Now, you are the expert. If a client comes to you, you are the ones to tell everyone what they're doing right, what they can do better. There are so many e-pharmacies. There are more than 50 apparently, the ones from hyper-local to national in size. What do you think they are doing right, and what can they do to differentiate themselves? Because we can see a similar situation which happened with the likes of e-commerce, general e-commerce brands. How do they differentiate? In this case, is it availability of stock, which is very essential these days, speedy delivery, the discount game, or what is it?
Sure, then that's a great question, and honestly, you spoke about one of the biggest barriers is trust. And if you look at what pharmacies are doing, online pharmacies are advertising right now, every single advert is largely around the discounting part of it, right? And what you can buy with the money that you save from on medicines and stuff like that. It's literally the whole creative idea. And I think the big one to call out here is if the problem is trust, you can't solve it by discounting. That's just the first thing that, every online platform, every startup these days invest money into discounting. So that's what you want to push as well. So if the challenge is trust, then how do you address that challenge is what we should be looking at as organizations, as online pharmacies. So to me, that's going to be one big area of how do I ensure that the right medicines are reaching. But having said that, in addition to trust, I mean, just take a step back and how do each of us buy medicines on a regular basis? When I need a medicine, I call up my nearest pharmacy or I drop them a WhatsApp message. So I'm using technology, but I'm using technology for the guy next door because I want to start taking my medicine immediately. So I think the single most important piece is that timely delivery, which I don't always expect from an online pharmacy. Then it's in chronic illnesses with regular replenishment of prescriptions that, convenience in other forms becomes important. Discounting again becomes even more important. But in a large amount of the cases, I just want my prescription or my medicines to come to me really, really fast. If I'm replenishing in a chronic care case, I want that to happen very conveniently, without following up or whatever. So I think those are the pieces to keep in mind to both build as a service and to communicate to consumers out there as well.
These are interesting points, and I would love to hear my other panelists' response if they have any to these. Do you have anything to add or refute or anything?
Yeah, I completely agree with the Praful on that, especially the discounting part. Whenever I've looked at e-pharmacy advertising, I always believe that it's slightly making a mockery of the whole situation. I think it's almost like how few years back we were working on a constipation product, and when we looked at the category, we realized that people are making jokes around constipation, and it's a serious problem. Someone who is suffering from it really needs medical intervention. And today people are talking about so many other things, just dumbing it down too much. And similar thing is happening in pharmacy. I think it has a great potential, as Praful also mentioned, and as we are listening to all the panelists. I think somewhere we need to bring it that seriousness. I think Pratik made a very relevant point that people need to be educated. What is e-pharmacy, how it works. No one is really spending that much effort in educating a normal person about that. It's almost like what's happening on vaccination right now, right? There are so many things that people are talking about for not all the reasons for not taking it. Similarly, in e-pharmacy, I'm talking about that. So I think that education for that category to happen so that adoption improves needs some more seriousness to be injected into the category and not just make it like a fun category to be in kind of a thing.
Interesting. You spoke about seriousness and not dumbing it down. It's a very interesting point.
Just to add to
Yes,
what we've been discussing on this point, I think, we believe that digital healthcare is going to be the primary touch of to the healthcare in coming years for sure. Rather than going to a clinic, we will be having a conversation over through an app or through any of the digital platforms to the doctor for the first instant. But giving the discounts, of course, it has its own pros and cons, and I think we have all highlighted the cons. but the pros of it is the Indian consumers. We also have to think, because it's not that that has been started by somebody in the category for the first time or the industry. Agree, we don't support the move as well. It has to be more towards the education, information, and relevance of the entire category. But yeah, from the last 10 to 12 years, that has been how we've been forced to move towards the entire digital space. Like what Pratik was also mentioning, that it's only just 1% of it right now. The entire 99% space is getting tracked, covered either by discounts or by information. So it has to, right now at the early stages, I think it has to go hand in hand.
Interesting. Mr. Verma, do you have anything to add?
No, yeah, a lot to add, in fact. But I would like to resonate with the point that Praful made. A good point that when we are acknowledging that if the problem is trust, then we don't solve it by discounting. And that's exactly what I was trying to say, that what we are trying to do is we are trying to educate people. And it starts with the basics of teaching what a prescription is. Why does a doctor give you a prescription? What significance does it hold, and why is it important to get those prescriptions renewed or to visit doctor? Because if you go a level deep, if you think about all these chronic diseases, one of the fundamental issues is around adherence, and adherence is not just to the medicine itself, but to the entire therapy, right? You need to eat correctly, you need to take medicines on time, you need to exercise properly,
Yes.
to take care of your mental health, right? But these are not the things that you can do once, let's say like a new year resolution that you do it for a month, and then you can just let it go and assume that everything will be good and healthy, right? A diabetes progression doesn't work like that, because you need to take care of your body, and your body, as people rightly say, is the first thing that you should care about, worry about, right? So now, but on that journey, all these little things, all these meeting your doctor, getting your checkups done. So all of that becomes very important. And when you go to that level, I think that's where these e-pharmacies and the e-clinics and all these players, these are just trying to facilitate your healthcare journey. So,
Yes.
but the broader point is, if you want to earn someone's trust, you need to make them understand what they are going through, what they should go through, and how all of this makes sense at a high level. Yeah.
It's interesting that trust is coming out so often, which is very essential, especially when it comes to medicine. And it brings me to a question which is also being asked by Aishwarya, and it's about the ads by these e-pharmacies, the online chemists. I've seen some of them, and they talk about dispelling myths. They talk about educating people. Do you think that's the way forward right now? Or what's your take on these ads? Anyone can go ahead and take this question.
Yeah, I personally feel that a lot of these ads are, still, not focusing enough on dispelling myths and talking about what the brand, in fact, brings to the table. So I think a lot more of that on mainstream advertising needs to happen for the online pharmacy space as well. And just, let's look at some surrogate categories, for example. You have something like your home delivery of food, right? Swiggy and Zomato and the like. If you look at their advertising, the communication is always on convenience. It's on the variety of food. It's on quick delivery, make impulse purchase. So these are the pieces that the consumer really connects with, right? Because that's the mind space that you are in. But here, on the other hand, in online pharmacies, when you're talking about medicines, you're talking about prescriptions, you're talking about healing faster. It's about using the product in the right way, making sure you have the most genuine product. And I'm surprised that people are not talking about that in their communication. So that's the big gap that pops out to me completely. And there's a lot more that can be done on that.
That's an interesting way to put it forward.
Again, if I have to add to what Praful was saying, again, it will go back to the stage where the category itself is. I'm still again drawing the parallels from previous previous growth of digital age space businesses. But that's not the solution as well. If somebody has done it, then should I as a category or also do the same? Of course, I 100% agree to what Praful is saying. There is a requirement of movement from those discount driven ads to much more led information driven communication.
Interesting. Mr. Manas, would you like to add something? Your take.
Yeah, I think most of it has already been covered. So when we actually launched NetMeds in India, so that Bharat Ki Pharmacy or India Ki Pharmacy, that whole line was actually devised by our team. What we have always understood, I think there are 2-3 things definitely. One is, of course, it is going to move more chronic in nature because of the time that it takes to deliver or other things that it takes. But one of the big points that I always think about is there is always a fine balance that you have to maintain between how much brand awareness do you need versus how much brand messaging you want to push forward. Because in India, healthcare is an afterthought. All of us know. Today we are talking, we are becoming very healthy because Corona has happened. If all of us know the day government announced vaccine will be given to all, we thought COVID is gone. And that's why we are sitting in wave 2 today. And that is how our relationship with our health is. And therefore, I fully understand when people are talking about discounting, you definitely want to get as many people as possible into the fold as fast as possible, because you don't have like millions of years to just create a brand aura and just keep talking about ethereal stuff. You have to deliver on certain things. And that's why some kind of communication is required. But yeah, at the same time, I think this category has a responsibility to educate people. And if a certain part of whole communication effort can be on that bit, that will really serve us well, because that's what is required right now.
This time, a chemist has great power on his shoulders, and Ben Parker, Spider-Man's uncle, had said, with great power comes great responsibility. I think that's what we should look at. Now, during our discussions, all of us, we can agree that in investor money, spike in usage. No, it's also about the big corporate giants entering the picture. 1mg, we have Tata acquiring 65%, we have Reliance taking on NetMeds, and then we also have the merger of PharmEasy and MedLife. This is powerful consolidation, and I want to understand from all of you, will these consolidations, and let's say we also have Amazon Pharmacy, and if there was a big pharmaceutical giant who decided to enter the picture, will this lead to a few brands capturing this category and creating extremely high entry barriers, or will we see an explosion of superlative efficiency in not just selling medicines online, but creating an ecosystem of healthcare which is quite advanced and is beneficial for everyone? What do you guys think? I want your viewpoints on this. Anyone can take it.
Okay. So I definitely think at the end of the day, in every category, you will have top 3 who will survive, and other guys will either consolidate or merge or go out of the business. That's happening. It happened in food. It happened even with Amazon and Flipkart. Everything is now under them. Now these biggies, and you're talking about Amazon. I think Amazon is picking up share in Apollo Pharmacy as well. So they are trying to use that 3,700 pharmacies that Apollo has got. That kind of a thing is also happening at the same time. I think when these big organizations come into healthcare, I think our issue has been that healthcare was always, again, an afterthought, wherein the investments, the focus was always, ki budget mein some money is left, let's invest that in healthcare. That's what was happening. But today, I think that has been, the whole category has been wide open because of COVID-19. It has shown the shortcomings that we have in the healthcare system, infrastructure, services, everything. So it requires corporatization in that sense. It needs a more professional approach. And with these biggies coming in, I think it will get the focus. They have lobby on their side. They have eyeballs on their side. So if they move here, it will definitely lead to more and more people focusing a lot more on this category, and that is going to benefit, I think, all of us. That's my point of view.
Absolutely echo what Dilip is saying. Even not only for healthcare, I think educare or edtech is gonna be into the similar range, and it's gonna be same, and it's definitely a positive swing for the entire category.
All right. Mr. Verma.
Yeah. I think as Dilip mentioned, it is inevitable. It was always inevitable. There are always the earlier ones, the first ones who go into a sector, who try to establish that sector, and then there's consolidation, which always happen. It was bound to happen. It is happening right now. It has been accelerated by COVID situation because suddenly your user behavior is now beginning to change. So that has happened. Now, from this online e-pharmacy sector point of view, this would be a good news to some extent, because when you have all these bigger players coming in, right? They bring all their might, they bring all their learning, they bring all their expertise, right? And as mentioned, this sector is still 1% of the entire pharmacy sector. So the big names coming in, the money coming in, it will only make the sector bigger, and eventually even these players, whoever the big ones will remain, they'll then compete amongst themselves. But right now, I think what their focus would be to establish in this sector. With the pie is huge, and there's so much for all these players, so they'll focus on that. And why it works from a consumer's point of view, because when you have all these players coming in, obviously they bring in the layer of convenience, right? The problem of adherence, etc., which I mentioned, that will be solved. Discounting to some extent, because a lot of users still exist who would want higher discounts, and that is why all these marketing teams and campaigns are run around that, because they also do their due diligence on all these things, right? So that is there. And I think entrant of a big player, or let's say technology driven systems and processes, what it also helps in is making the entire system efficient, right? You'll have your tracking, your traceability, your accountability. If you want to do audits, all of that is possible because now everything goes through a very robust system, right? And it also helps your, and because they will have to work with all these offline pharmacies and vendors, so it will also help them streamline their processes, and by getting this need of technology, or getting this introduction of technology in their processes, and thereby improving their efficiency. So I think if everyone can try to leverage this moving in of all these big players, I think there's a lot to be gained by this.
I think Pratik hit the nail on the head, if I may kind of add to that.
Yes.
I really, really hope that the entry of, some of these big players, more money is coming into it, really helps this entire industry to invest more in building convenience. So ensuring that, medicines can be delivered within an hour from me ordering them. Is there a way to do that? Look at the medicine delivery is very different from any other delivery. Uh, uh, Maybe the integration of the offline and the online is a very important the channels is a very important space in online pharmacy as compared to any other online commerce subsegment in a way. And the again, Pratik mentioned adherence. I think that's a very big one. So for monies to be invested in technology that drives adherence of patients. I mean, for all of us in the healthcare industry, the biggest challenge is that even after a doctor prescribes a medicine, it's not always taken in the prescribed dosage by the patient. So
you never complete the course.
Exactly, or take it regularly, or in the prescribed dosage, or in the manner. There's tons of lapses out there. It'll be really nice to see these monies that are being invested by the corporates or by the VCs into to find its way into solving these problems via the industry. So that would be really, really interesting if we can pull that off.
All right. Thank you so much for your answers, because This proves that the consolidation phase that is going on will reap benefits. And from this, it gave me a question which was also asked in the comment section. It is about going forward. While it's B2C right now, we're focusing on B2C. Will we see a surge in B2B as well? If e-pharmacy is supplied to institutions, hospitals, will that become an important part? Just want your take on this. A simple yes or no would suffice.
It is. Yes, it is. So being a marketplace, we are delivering to both B2C, B2B2C as well. And given the last 1 year, this has become far much more important for the HRs or the organizations or big brands to have robust employee health and wellness benefits. So yes, this has been in process, and I think going forward, it's just going to strengthen.
That's wonderful. We all need access to medicines, be it individuals or institutions.
And just not only just medicines, it has now become in terms of annual health checks. It is started becoming in terms of I require a package or a subscription in terms of covering my entire employee base for teleconsultations. So that has been the growth, and I feel that it's going to be there and it's going to just grow multifold.
Mr. Manas, what would you say?
Yeah, I'll agree with whatever Ashish and Pratik think. I think if that's the direction that it is going, I think it's a great direction to have, and I completely agree with the point that has been made.
Interesting. You know, before I wrap this session up, I was talking to my father, who was explaining to me the cycle of how a drug is manufactured and how it comes to the retailer. And he told me the pharmaceutical industry has the most complicated supply chain you can think of. From CNF to stockists to druggists to distributors, it's a complex chain as compared to other categories. I'm sure the e-pharmacy category will help ease this. And I'm going forward, I'm sure I'll come back next year with such a similar topic, and I'd love to see how this category has evolved. We have a few minutes left and we have a lot of questions. I think we should touch them. There's so many. Let me just check. This is an interesting one by Alok Datta, who asks, if a pharmaceutical wants to jump into the fray, will the dynamics change? We're talking about brands, but here's asking, let's say if AstraZeneca or Sun Pharmaceuticals comes and says, hey, order from us. How will this change?
It's happening already.
Oh, please tell us about it.
So there is this Pharma Rack acquisition that has happened, if you have heard about it. So I think there is Alchem, Cadila, Cipla, DRL, Lupin, Mankind, Sun, and Torrent. So there are these 7-8 biggies who have acquired one, a research firm. Another one is more, I would not really say it is into e-pharmacy right now, but more like a logistics company. And there are chances that they will start coming into it, because the point that most of the pharmaceuticals are talking about today is that these e-pharmacies, some of these like Amazon or these guys, when they have started selling their own products through their own platforms. And when that happens, what happens to a pharmaceutical brand? Will my brand be sold, or will my brand be one of the options that they can choose from? And once that happens, so it's almost like generic versus branded discussion that was happening around 2.5 years back when government of India introduced that. So that's happening right now. And there are chances, if not now, at least in next 1.5 years, that pharmaceutical might jump into a foray. They might come into e-pharmacy, and that will also start competing with the existing e-pharmacy players.
I think it's great news. The more choices we have, some may get confused, but most of us will be happy with it.
Yeah, actually, if you ask me, I wouldn't really at this stage where India market is, and as Pratik has been talking about 1% of the total market, I wouldn't really want to confuse people a lot by giving them too many choices, because it sort of sometimes confuses you so much that you say, let me shut the shop here, go walk to that chemist and get my medicine, rather than trying to make. It's almost like when you order for Domino's pizza and the guy at the other end gives you 20 different options. You say, okay, happy with the Maggie at home rather than ordering from you guys. So yeah, that's
It
my.
has happened at my place. We looked at a medicine online. We thought, let's go to the chemist because there's no discount. The chemist told us the MRP, and then we thought, let's go to the generic store. I'll walk for 5 minutes, but maybe we'll get a better price there. That's the thought going on at my home right now. All right, we've reached the end of the session. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. There was lots of learning, unlearnings, and an enjoyable session. Thank you so much for attending this. And I hope you have a great day ahead.
Thanks a lot for inviting us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.